You're listening to All Marine Radio on the All Warrior Radio Network.
Well, it's been a while, but I think everybody jumped at the chance to come back on and talk about things like this because everybody, when we did this during I don't know what we called that, the evacuation from the Kabul International Airport.
Mhm.
And all we do is just come on and try to explain things to the best of our ability because all we're doing is watching what everybody else is watching on TV. And so all open source stuff. So we're not giving away any state secrets, but wanted to have Jeff and Will and Tim on and talk about the things that everybody's seeing. So fellas, welcome back.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Oh yeah.
There you go. The talk about first question, and Jeff, you can go first.
Okay.
General thoughts on what you've seen so far.
Well, it's very nostalgic because I was there when I was 19 years old. 19-year-old corporal. I left after 15 months as a 20-year-old sergeant, and it was my favorite year of my life. Was in that place for a bunch of different reasons. But I have to tell you,
Wait, tell everybody where are you talking about?
I'm talking about the American Embassy in Tehran, Iran. About 14, 15 months before the hostages were taken. I left. And but what leaped out at you about being in Tehran then was in the front of the embassy, the Mercedes Benzes would pull up, and and dignitaries would come out. But then behind the embassy, there's camel caravans back there. It was like it was straight out of Rudyard Kipling, and you just fell in love with the place. It was great. It's about the same altitude as Denver, hotter though, in the summer, and colder. Well, maybe not colder in the winter, but it was, it's just a great place. I have to tell you, I'm looking at this thing, and I know all of us know the dangers of trying to nation build. We've been through it twice, and I think that the way this is going now, it's like, hey, look, we just don't want them to enrich uranium to the point where they can come up with 11 or 12 nuclear bombs, and that's what we're doing now. We're pounding them so that that can't happen. I don't believe that this is going to result in nation building. I believe that our actions in this now are going to focus mainly on denying them the ability to enrich the uranium, which means a lot of the high technology strikes and things that you're seeing now. If there is going to be some kind of regime change, it's going to, and it has to happen. Then if it does have to happen, it's got to be from somewhere within, and that's very difficult.
All right, Will, got a thought? A general thought about what you've seen?
Just to build on what Jeff said, this is sort of a punitive campaign aimed at preventing them from attaining enrichment of nuclear weapons. What a thing that has impressed me is that the entire administration is locked in. And anytime someone has tried to pick that apart and talk about, well, we don't know if it'll be decisive, and if you want regime change, you can't do that with an air campaign, and you're just supporting the Israelis or whatever. Rubio, Hegseth, the president, they have all been narrowly focused on what they're doing without allowing themselves to be distracted into these other side arguments. And if you just think about Iraq War, Afghanistan War, Desert Storm, Panama, it seems as if there was in the administrations that were in charge, when those started, there's a little bit of mealy mouth around the edges, trying to sort of make excuses and not necessarily lay out exactly what they're trying to achieve and just go in and do it. And I would say that that has been good for this so far.
Tim?
Remember back during the first Gulf War, the Scud hunts, everything was focused on, not everything, a lot of effort, an incredible amount of effort was put into Scud hunts in order to prevent Israel from retaliating against Iraq, because back then all the smart kids, the credentialed elite, said we can never cooperate with Israel. And here we've got an administration who's cooperating with Israel, and they're, they may not topple the mullahs. They may, in fact, the worst scenario would be for that regime of mullahs to stay in power. But even if they do, they no longer have a navy. They no longer have an air force. They're rapidly depleting their missile stocks. They've got no credibility, and they're randomly attacking all their neighbors except for Turkey, which is interesting. And I just couldn't be happier. I remember in 1979 as a corpsman, I participated in a march up Connecticut Avenue with a bunch of Iranians who were protesting America, all in Khomeini's favor. Me and a guy named T.J. Radovich had shirts on that said Khomeini sucked, but we were too big for those guys to mess with us, and we were in there sneering at everybody. I couldn't believe that this was my country. And then this morning, I see Iranians marching up Connecticut Avenue, waving the American flag, saying, "God bless the USA." What a change. What a complete and total change from when we were kids in 1979. It's so gratifying to see. And I don't give a shit what follows the Iran regime, quite frankly. But the fact that we're, as Will said, doing a punitive expedition like we did against Venezuela, I love it. I'm a big punitive expedition kind of guy. I think that's what we should have done in the beginning in Afghanistan. And no longer are we soured with these elites and their pottery barn analogies of, if we break it, we have to fix it. We're going to break everything, and we're not going to fix shit. And I love it.
Exactly. To me, first of all, the complexity of what's going on, right? When you look at all the different U.S. units that go there, the Air Force, and then the scope of the number of sorties they're flying, all the ships involved in it, right? I mean, what the air tasking order must look like on a daily basis, it must be amazing. I mean, that thing looks like the Bible, right? I mean, and so it's every line item is a sortie essentially in the air tasking order, and all these things were in the planning part of this. And so just the level of sophistication to get all that stuff there, right? To be able to logistically support it, right? And then get it on the same sheet of music and then go do this shit against, Iran is a formidable opponent. And I know, we took some of the wind out of their sails last summer. And I would think when we did that, we had this in mind, that like, hey, we have to set up if we have to come back and do this again, right? So let's make sure we dismantle this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. So we'll make our jobs easier than if we have to come back. And I don't think they were hoping they would not, but there was always the eventuality that we would. But just the level of the level of difficulty doing this, right, is, I mean, if you could see it, and then, and most of these assets have surged over there. They were not in the region initially. So when you see that, I mean, it's just no, and I think of it, for instance, I had the same thought when we did the thing last June when we got out to their nuclear sites, and then the same thought with Maduro. Can you imagine the Chinese and the Russians looking at this, and they think they have good militaries? They can't project that kind of power and do it on the other side of the planet, and let alone at this scope, right? Let alone at the scope. And so you must think they must watch this stuff and go, you got to be shitting me, man. The Americans just they went halfway around the world, didn't lose
Mhm.
anybody, and blasted the shit out of the Iranians.
Exactly.
And they lost nothing. They lost
Mhm.
nothing. And
And think
so,
about it. Think about it as well. We actually have an ally that is
Mhm.
comparable in Israel.
Mhm.
None of them have anything remotely close to that
Right.
if they want to
well,
go halfway
and
around the world.
we probably haven't either since what, World War II?
Mhm.
Hadn't had to go to war with somebody who's tapping their toe, who's smart as shit, and wants to fight. I mean, the
Mhm.
people that
Right.
the coalitions of the willing that we participate with, that was all bullshit. That was all political bullshit, kabuki dance bullshit. We're paying their, combat pay, and they're not doing any of the heavy lifting, right? I mean, where are we gonna? And again, God bless the Poles and whatnot, but there wasn't anybody who came to fight,
Right.
maybe other than some guys up by the Haditha Dam. I think they were
Mhm.
from Kazakhstan or something. Man, those guys
Kaz-
would
Chechens. They're Chechens.
they would let
Yeah.
it rip on your ass if you
Mhm.
screwed around by that fucking dam. And
Mhm.
but I mean, can you imagine how motivating is when
Mhm.
because what the Israelis know is this is what we've been fighting for since the inception of our nation. We have a
Mhm.
chance to transform this to create alliances with our Arab neighbors and live in peace for the first time in our existence.
Yeah.
This was the vision, and so you don't think those guys are fired the fuck up to go to war?
Mhm.
And
You
and
know,
we- and, and again, like I said, we haven't really gone to war with an ally like that.
not for a long
Nope.
time. You know, the that thing that happened, the 12-day war, was like the real world version of the cut off horse's head in your bed to the Iranians, you know, and uh, and they just called our bluff, but it wasn't a bluff, and now they're paying for it, you know. And then it's and then punctuated by what we did to Maduro. You know, they're foolish, and because they they somehow convince themselves that they're just bluffing.
Well, but
You,
again, Jeff, let
you
me in their defense. This is what they've done forever, right? Oh, the
hmm
Americans are going to puff their chest out. They're not going to follow through. They don't follow through in Iraq. They don't follow through in Afghanistan. Every one of their presidents has
right,
backed down to us,
and they're
right?
right,
So
and they're
so
right about that.
right. So history's on their side.
hmm
The Americans they're not going to do this, right? And you could, this is the war we should have fought a long time ago,
hmm
right?
No doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. Give me give me one thing that has surprised you, that kind of raised your eyebrow, that you've seen in all of this. And again, we're all watching open source shit. So
Sure.
what you've seen,
Well, I think what you said, it's the remarkable single mindedness of everybody, you know, of importance in the administration, the vice president, the secretary of defense, the secretary of state, you know, everyone down to the secretary of education, Linda McMahon. They're all, you know, of one mind. You know, it's refreshing to see because in the first time
hey, lower
from
your
1960,
camera because all we see is your eyebrows.
so from 1960 or from 2016 onward, there was a lot of backstabbing in the administration. There is none of that now, you know?
Well, the other thing that, and I think we talked about this before, but or maybe not, because it's been a while. Every person Trump selected knows how to sing in public.
Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
they're fucking good, man. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
and Rubio, I mean, Rubio, Vance, Hegseth. I mean, no, and then
mm-hmm.
that Bassard, is it
Yep.
Bessner? That guy's
Besson,
Besson,
unbelievable, right?
Besson. Yep.
Mhm.
And then you have Christy Nome is really good. I mean, they, and he learned that the first term. Like, you can have really competent people, but if they can't get in front of a microphone and if they
Mm-hmm,
can't articulate what they're trying to do to the American people, they're of no use to you.
mm-hmm. Right.
And everybody he selected can all do that.
Yep.
And Rubio and Vance, I mean, the way they kneecap people that ask them stupid questions or try to play games with them is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Will,
it is.
Will, a thing that has raised your eyebrows.
Yeah, if you added up everything we spent on defense in the last 20 years, let's just say we average 600 billion on budget in the last 20 years. So that's 12 trillion. You would expect the degree of sophistication, F-22s, aircraft carriers, sea-launched missiles, F-35, B-2, etc. But the thing that I noted is these Lucas drones, where 7 months ago, they started a task force, I think in CENTCOM. And this company had taken one of the Iranian Shahed drones, reverse engineered it, figured out how to make it better than it was, networked it, and build them cheaper. And they let out like a $30 million contract. So $30 million is a lot of money. I mean, to you guys, it probably is to me as well. But in the Pentagon,
Wait,
$30 million.
What the
$30 million.
What the fuck did that mean?
$30 million in the Pentagon is in the petty cash drawer.
Yeah, right.
And it apparently, so these things are, I think they carry like a 100-pound warhead. So they're not going deep, they're not bunker busting, etc. But they can overwhelm area targets. And so for all the money we pay for defense contractors and for everything that everyone's watched in Ukraine in the last 4 years, none of those people that we pay billions to did shit in regard to that, seemingly. And this sort of startup company somewhere in Arizona came up with this technology. And I would say that that only happens because of Trump, right? He is unwilling to listen to the Washington consensus that talks about procurement processes and et cetera, et cetera. And he says, go build it.
Yep.
And it gets built. And I don't know that they've been decisive. I sort of doubt it because of that size of that warhead, but they've been additive. And they get the math on our side. Now, instead of dropping multi-million-dollar missiles on area targets, we're dropping tens of $1,000.
But those Shahed missiles, those Shahed things that you mentioned that the Iranians started, it's about the size of an SUV, and they're still hard to deal with because they're cheap and they come. That's one of their main staples now, is because it's hard to detect them coming. You can shoot them off the back of a truck. So it's like
I think I saw a picture of a shipping container that had 5 of them loaded inside of it. So that also seems, if we can build them at scale, logistically very easy to get moved around. And again, it's a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 item instead of shooting a $2 million TLAM. So that one I just found very interesting, in a flash to bang time that they were able to procure it, and the fact that we learned this watching Ukraine, and now we're implementing it ourselves, as opposed to waiting for the next war and spending $50 billion to get that capability. So that caught my attention.
Jimmy, what caught your attention?
The proficiency of Israeli intelligence on their ability to hack every traffic camera in Tehran, monitor them for a year, and place those the leadership, be able to tell exactly where they're going to be on Sunday when they uncork this thing. Because I'm used to our Central Intelligence Agency, who's attempted to say that they were involved in this process too, but I don't believe it, because it's very unlike them to actually have somebody out there in the wild on their own, outside of an embassy.
But hey, in the CIA's defense, that's the story that's being generated, is that the
Mhm.
intelligence came from the CIA, and
No. Only generated by the New York Times. And the New York Times is the mouthpiece for the CIA. Only the New York Times came with that story. And
well, no, no,
so
I don't read the New York Times. I heard it from either Hegseth, Rubio, or Vance, one of those three, because that's
Mhm.
who I've watched. One of them said that.
Right. Well,
you're kind of ruining my. But at any rate, it wasn't the CIA who hacked all the traffic cameras
Right.
and spent a year watching those guys go around.
I
If they
remember that.
provided the last bit of intelligence,
Yeah, Timmy got a good
fine.
point. Timmy got a good point because you remember the fucking pagers? Excuse my French. Remember the pager thing? That
Yeah,
was kind of like that is a level of a mixture of technical, superiority, but also just gut level reading of human nature and tactics. Having these guys, they hit the pager and it blows their ear off. And
No,
so
no, no,
now
no,
these
no,
guy
no. It was better than that. It was in their
oh,
they
heck,
blow their
pocket.
nuts
It's
off.
in their
yeah,
pocket, and it blew their junk off, right?
yeah,
But to me, when you talk about that, which might be if there's a greater intelligence operation that, and I'm sure we could probably go through the annals of history and maybe
hmm
find one.
hmm
Um, the whole Enigma thing in World War II,
hmm
it was pretty incredible. But that completely neutralized, right? All
oh
that
yeah,
development. And to me, the Israelis had worked on that for so long, envisioning a day, this day's going to come when
hmm
they're coming for us.
hmm
And what we, because they could have done that a long time ago, but they
hmm
didn't. And they had that company. And so to me, and I was going to say the same thing Timmy said about just, and again, I don't know if the CIA had a role in that. Obviously
hmm
we were just reading and listening to what everybody's saying, but the intelligence, starting with the pager thing, right, and then to be able to kill 49 of their leaders, and today they got a bunch more, right?
yeah,
I mean, and they're,
Yeah,
I mean, you talk about putting somebody on the horns of a dilemma.
hmm
They can't use their cell phones. They
yeah,
can't use the internet, right? I mean, there was
yeah,
that great story that the Mossad hacked the number one Islamic prayer app, right, in Iran. And they're
right.
and they're putting up messages about surrender, you'll be treated fairly on the Islamic prayer
hmm
app. And you're reading
Yeah,
it,
but
and their television stations. They hacked the television stations.
right, and
hmm
just going. And so you look at that level of sophistication and then what they did today. So you can't we can't we have to gather because that's the only way we can do it.
yep.
And
I,
so
I,
when they gather, then you kill them all. It is the most beautiful symphony, right, in the world, that like we can't do anything, right? And you know how, and I would say the Arab world works in particular. Nobody wants to be part of the losing side because that ain't a good thing. And so
right.
when everybody sees, I mean, the fucking president of Lebanon stood up and says, "Hey, Hezbollah, no more." And
Yeah,
you're watching that going, "Oh, big brother's gone.
yeah,
The
yeah.
witch is dead, and now everybody's gonna stand up." It's like, okay,
Because,
okay,
like you said, dozens and dozens of, the high echelon leadership is being killed quickly. And so that means more and more inexperienced, immature people are taking over and they're playing the same playbook. So what do? They attack people who used to, at least, if it weren't their allies, at least wouldn't, be against them. So they attack Bahrain, they
wait, well,
attack,
let's
they took
talk about
Qatar,
let's talk
But
about
just
that.
before we go there, it's interesting. I'm not surprised
Mhm.
about the Israeli intelligence dominance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We should have learned by
Yeah,
now that we weren't going to do this based on what we had. We had to
Mhm.
do it based on what they had, and what they had is going to be an order of magnitude better than what we had.
right,
So I give them full credit, but I'm not surprised.
It's the
right.
mother of
And
invention, man.
if I could add one thing, just like the Israelis have been able to keep a secret, suddenly the Pentagon's keeping secrets too. There's been how, zero leaks, it seems to me, about all this incredible amount of preparation and whatnot, not a word leaked out to anybody.
Right.
That's rather unusual for our Pentagon. And I think that's attributed to Hegseth doing a little bit of house cleaning.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
You know, well, I want to talk about the people being surprised that they, you know, if you, to me, and we've talked about this before, if you don't understand that the Arab states hate Iran, then you don't understand the Middle East. If you believe their posturing kabuki dance that they do,
Mhm.
then you don't understand. They fucking hate each other, right? And if they're not saying it in public, it's simply because they're being polite because Iran is a powerful nation over there. But the Arab nations hate those fuckers, man. That's the fundamental thing you have to understand about the region. And if you don't understand that, then but how many people have you seen get on in the last 4 days and talk about, oh, we couldn't believe they shot at, like, get the fuck out of here, man. They hate each other, right? They hate
Yeah.
each other. So, and then, you see the Arab states, they're all about it now. They're all about it now, right?
Yeah.
And don't forget, Bahrain has got significant Shia minority. Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia's got Shia. I don't know about Qatar and
Well, Iraq,
the
Iraq's
Emirates.
is Iraq's
Iraq,
mostly Shia.
obviously.
Yeah. And
But
and
those
the
two countries in the Gulf, and I believe Qatar and the Emirates
Qatar's
also
got a lot
have not
of
insignificant Shia minority. So those people, they make the Saudis nervous, right? They make the Bahrainis nervous.
So when the dust settles, well, let's talk about the whole issue about boots on the ground. Uh, do you expect to, I think we've learned that lesson. I mean, you talk about watching videos of Iranian people and the way they reacted,
Mhm.
right? When they heard the news that the guy who's, killed so many of them and run that nation was dead. I mean, I don't know how you could get emotional watching that. I mean,
Mhm.
just there, but at the end of the day, I think we've all lived it. Nation building is a very difficult and problematic proposition, and there's only so much we can do, right?
Right.
And so in my opinion, we do as much as we can do. We try to set them up for something, but at the end of the day, it's the Iranian people that will decide that. And our job is to defang the current regime. And I believe, hoping that a division commander, an army commander, somebody says, hey, I've had enough. I'm
Mhm.
coming to Tehran, kind of like the Roman Legion kind of thing.
Mhm.
I'm coming to Iran, right? I'm going to fight for the Iranian people. And you know how quickly the thing will turn once something like that happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, if we haven't learned that we can't dictate that, then
Mhm.
we're stupid. And it sounds from everything I've heard everybody say that they understand that. And
Mhm.
so the idea of boots on the ground, I mean, I don't think is a realistic proposition. I think that people that are losing their minds over it are moderately uninformed, if not fundamentally uninformed. And
They just hate the president more than they love the America.
right, right.
Yeah.
To me, thoughts about that. What do you believe in terms of what you've heard? What do you think is going to happen?
I, I don't think there'll be any American boots on the ground at maybe a special forces raid, but I wouldn't even think that was going to happen. What I'm afraid, though, is when you talk about the people of Iran, you saw celebrating, you were talking Persians. You've got 30% of the population is Azerbaijanis. You've got the Kurds out in the west. You've got the Baluch in the east. The Kurds and the Baluch have gigantic militias that have been fighting for their freedom and to have their own countries. The Kurds against Turkey, the Baluch against Pakistan. I cannot imagine that when the theocracy falls, that the Baluch, the Kurds, the Azerbaijanis, even the Turkmen, because they got a lot of them also in the Golestan province, I can't imagine they're going to not try to carve out a little piece of their own territory so they can have their own countries. So I don't think that the people are going to be very successful in coming together because there's a shit ton of minorities, to include Marsh Arabs, inside the Iranian country. And as we all know, once you get out of the Western hemisphere and start looking at multiculturalism, unless you've got a strict police state like Singapore, that shit's messy because they don't like each other. And so I don't see the Iranian people coming together effectively unless they let the Kurds and the Baluch and the Azerbaijanis go their separate way, which they may well do. But that is not a happy place because these people don't get along with each other. Kurds, Baluch, Azerbaijanis, Sunni Muslim, not Shia.
Well, if we think the purpose of this is to prevent them from enriching uranium to the point of achieving, weapons grade building bombs, I can't find a scenario that requires ground troops.
Absolutely right. That's right.
And this is what I said earlier. An impressive thing is that everyone in the administration has been singing the same tune. And I think the vice president basically came out and said it's not going to happen. As opposed to when we went to, Afghanistan, a couple months after 9/11, and we achieved what we wanted to achieve, absent killing Osama bin Laden. And then the Bush administration got shamed into this nation building thing. And if you recall, prior to 9/11, Rumsfeld, and I believe President Bush, but I think Rumsfeld in particular, talked about nation building being a fool's errand. But they sort of got shamed into it. I don't see people being shamed into it. Because in the end, right, I don't know about you guys, I cannot recall talking about this war with anyone in the greater Kansas City metro area in the last however many days. I don't recall it coming up in any conversation. Nobody in America cares. So they're definitely not going to care enough for us to commit ground troops and heighten risk, astronomically. And so why would we do it? If we have an objective, and I think I understand what the objective is, I can't understand how any ground combat forces contribute to that objective. Oh my God, we want to have stability in Iran and the Iranian people deserve a government. Oh, fuck that. Who cares? Right? Most of what we want to know about the rest of the world is to just not hear about it. Right? 20 years ago, what was our objective in Afghanistan? To never hear the word Afghanistan again. Now, Iran, much more strategic place, 90 million people, fourth or fifth, sixth biggest oil reserves. But in the end, I don't think President Trump, I don't think anyone in the administration really thinks it's our job to figure out who's going to be in charge of that thing. As long as who's ever in charge takes the pledge and says, I'm not going to build nuclear weapons.
Well, in my opinion, they don't even need to take the pledge. And again, it's in my opinion, we've learned very hard lessons about the limits of what we can do, unless you want to stay there for 100 years. Okay, and so I would disagree with you. There's people in the country that do care, and maybe not very many in Kansas City, but
who are the people that care?
We're not going to do that. We can't do that, right? And we've learned hard lessons about trying to do that, and we have to accept that we
got 330 million Americans.
Right.
What percent gets up and thinks about this stuff?
I don't know. I don't know. But when you make an exclusive statement like nobody cares, okay,
I think it's a tiny percent.
That's a bit overstated, I would say.
Okay, I in my general everyman conversation, nobody cares.
Okay,
right? They just don't.
I accept that. I accept that. Okay. But to me, we've just learned too many hard lessons about it. And as moving as everything we saw last weekend was when the Iranians went out there, that's great. But at the end of the day, right? What is it? The idea of realpolitik. They cannot have the ability to enrich uranium, right? They cannot have ballistic missiles in any way, shape, or form. Okay. And the proxy thing, that's over. Now, we've done everything we can do to create circumstances for you to take control of this country. But we're leaving. And we just want everybody to know, if you stack, and this is what we should have said to the Afghans, if you stack two bricks on top of each other that we don't like, we're going to come and wreck
We'll
the
be
place.
back.
We're going to come and wreck the place. Okay? Just understand that. And I hope you believe that now. Okay? I hope you believe that now. You know, which is what the Israelis did. You shoot a drone or whatever the Hezbollah shot at them. We have a list of targets that we're going to prosecute. Okay? It's as long as your arm. Go ahead, green light us to do that shit. Because we know we need to do that. We're just looking for an excuse to do it. Okay. So I again, that's why and everybody has said the same thing. So I again, it's we'd love to be able to, you know, be all things to all people at the end of the day, right? And I think the president likes to win, right? Very pleased with what we did last summer, right? No American casualties, right? And a great operation. And that's what we're good at. The Maduro thing, that's what we're good at. This stuff that you're seeing right now, that's what we're good at. The whole nation building and putting people, you know, on the dirt and all that, we're not good at that. And we should stay away from it. I don't think the president has any intention of allowing that to happen. And so, Timmy, your thoughts on it?
The girl at the alkaline water store here in McAllen asked me today for my thoughts about what was happening in Iran, but she did not know what Beirut 83 was. She didn't even know about Soleimani getting Ginzu knifed to death in the first administration. That's the only person I've talked to that cares about this. But coming back to what you were saying, yeah, I am not the least bit worried about boots on the ground. I'm a little bit worried about things going pear-shaped in Iran and the international media trying to drag us in there. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of water. They could have things could get very difficult for the Iranian people, and nobody wants to see that. But I don't know that I don't think that our current administration is going to be hoodwinked into do the bidding of what the elite inside the Acela corridor for the Northeast thinks should be done, because they don't care about them anymore, and nor do I.
Yeah, no, we've rejected the Pottery Barn school of foreign policy. Not going to do that. The
Yep.
all right. What thoughts have gone through your head that we haven't discussed tonight? Will?
I think that the whole strategy has been what you would expect of what strategy should be. President isolates Iran in the first term, Abraham Accords, makes Israel a non-pariah in the Middle East, gets great cooperation, identifies a significant strategic issue, Iranian nuclear and ballistic missiles, and some side areas help contribute to the strategy. Look, taking out Maduro contributes to the strategy of isolating Iran. And all of these things also contribute to pressuring China and pressuring Russia. You have a certain amount of support with these countries, and we take them away, and you're kind of a eunuch and unable to stop us from doing that. And it's funny, 10 years ago, if anyone would ask, is Donald Trump a grand strategist, right? You get laughed out of the room.
Right.
But I would compare what he's done to get to this point in so many of these places, you know, compare it to Ronald Reagan. Reagan said, you know, what's going to happen in the Cold War? We win, they lose. And he was right. And no one else had said that for 40 years up until that time. And so I give great credit through all the difficulties and all the other crap, particularly in the first term. But it sure seems to me that this is a strategy that's in place that is allowing us to see into the future with optimism as opposed to with fear.
Timmy?
I was disappointed to see that the president is going to escort tankers and possibly flag them through the Straits of Hormuz, because this isn't the 1980s. We don't get our oil from them. If the price of oil goes up to $100 a barrel, that's boom times in Texas. And I know that China is the most China is greatly affected by the closing of the Straits of Hormuz, as is, of course, Korea and Japan. And I would rather us start providing Korea and Japan's oil and let China figure out how to get it through the Straits of Hormuz. But I don't think that that's practical. That's just me being petty and vindictive. So I'm disappointed that I don't think the Strait of Hormuz closing means what it did back when you were in the Straits of Hormuz in the 80s trying to keep that bitch open, because we've got plenty of our own oil. And we can also
I would say that,
Venezuela's.
Tim, though, just the way the market works, if Exxon's drilling in the Permian Basin and the price goes to $100 a barrel internationally, you're not going to be able to buy it for $60 a barrel in the U.S. You're going to pay market price. So if the Strait of Hormuz gets cut off, the bathtub full of oil gets lower, and that means prices go up across the board. And like it or not, there's a political calculation there. As silly as gas prices are sometimes, right? People say, oh, gas went up 10 cents. That's a lot. When you do it out in your budget over the year, it may be a lot or maybe not very much. But one of the things the president has talked about is lowering energy prices as a way to jumpstart the domestic economy, et cetera. So keeping the strait open is, like it or not, it's strategic. It's got to be done. I don't know if escorting tankers is the way to go, as opposed to some other methodology to keep it open, because escorting tankers is resource intensive, and our Navy isn't what it was 40 years ago either. So.
No, I would only point out that if it gets much below 60 a barrel, you're not fracking because you're not making any money.
Right.
That $80 to $100 is a sweet spot for my state. I will concede your point, sir.
Well, and the whole issue of mining the Straits of Hormuz, when somebody asked me about that, I thought, well, I don't see it happening, because shooting ships with missiles is about as easy as it fucking gets. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's not hard targeting and hard shooting. Okay. So for them to get, right, mines out there in any number, right, and unless the mines drive, they just throw them into water someplace and the mines drive themselves now. If that's not the case, then it's going to be very, very difficult to get ships out there. And again, you're talking about the shipping lane in the Straits of Hormuz. That isn't Pierside, okay? You got to go. And we've been watching this shit with a lot of assets for a while now. And if they try to even, I don't even know that they can get to sea like that. So to me, we need to be vigilant, keep an eye on it. But I think that's an overstated problem. But I am the guy who said that, that Joe Biden would never be elected president. And with all the voter falsification shit, I think I can safely say he was not elected president. I stand on that fucking statement. Okay.
Nice try.
Thank you. I keep saving all those articles. Jeff, you're still muted.
So here, a couple of things. Number one, if you remember, those mines, and that's a very shallow. The whole Persian Gulf is pretty shallow. They put those mines in the bottom, and they activate themselves and go up and hit the ships that are going over. It's not as easy as just mines floating in the water like World War II. You guys know that. But the other thing, what I worry about, you say, what do you think might happen? These guys a stubborn streak of fanaticism. Witness all of them getting together for a meeting, stupid, right? And pushing that same old bullshit even after the 12-day war when they got their asses handed to them. So where are they going to go now that there's no place there's no way to shoot missiles at us anymore. There's no way to effectively do the things that they're doing. I think they're going to put together these things like the Russians had to go through the Fulda Gap, man-packed nukes or man-packed, bombs that are loaded with, nuclear waste and shit like that. Something nasty against civilians in Europe or even in the United States. That's where we're vulnerable. That's that when you can put together 21 assholes and murder 3,000 people with a bunch of jet airlines and not one bomb, not one gun. Where there's a malicious will, there's a way, and that's the type of thing I think they're going to turn to.
Okay. You said there were two things. What's the second thing? The
first
thing was the
first
mind?
thing was the mines, right? And
Yeah.
the second thing was, I think that we're going to see that they go low tech and look to just murder a shitload of people,
All right.
innocent people.
All right, Timmy, second to the last question, then we'll wrap up. So, when you look into your crystal ball, um, what do you see as the most likely outcome of this?
I think the most likely outcome is if the theocracy falls. I believe the military will step in to fill the void, and we'll come to some kind of agreement. And I think that the only thing that we'll have to do is what we do the best: fork over some money just to prevent civilian catastrophe, because they're going to have a hard time getting food. Already having a hard time getting enough water into Tehran. It's going to be difficult for them once their infrastructure has been degraded as much as we're degrading it. So that's what I see happening. As the military takes over, we reach an agreement, we start turning on the money spigot, and hopefully avoid a catastrophe with the civilian population.
Where'd you hear about the water problem in Tehran?
That was in the news 6 months ago. They were talking about evacuating the city because they didn't have enough water.
That's crazy because it's in the mountains. It's like and all that glacial water that it's like
I don't know anything about. I know that we cut the water unintentionally off to them in the Helmand, but that was because of the Kajaki Dam maintenance and my stupid check dam. Yeah, but that was 6 months ago. That was all in the news. I don't know anything about Tehran, but that was what they were talking about. Was literally evacuating the city due to water shortages.
Wow.
All right, Jeff, what about you? When the dust settles on all this, what do you expect to see?
Well, I think similar to Tim, what he said, about the military. I don't think though I think what's going to happen is there's going to be, because they've been treated so much, that someone's going to try and make a deal, and in that deal, part of it will be elections, right? And so you're going to start seeing people like the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi Jr., or whatever his name is, and a couple other people, that are coming to the fore, that they kind of, square off and do this thing, and there's elections. Now, it could go to shit, but I think, that they will accept outsiders to come in and make sure there's because they're sick of murder, they're sick of, arbitrary, female mutilation and crap like that. I think, so I'm kind of optimistic about that.
Gotcha. Well, when the dust settles?
Well, I think the dust is going to settle in, a matter of weeks. The punitive campaign sort of draws to a close, and I think 3 to 4 weeks would be a long time. Iran has got 90 odd million people. They got the fourth, fifth, or sixth biggest petroleum reserve out there. And I think it's going to be, ruled by strongman, and it would seem strongman is likely military. And so is there something inside the Iranian military that would be quasi secularizing? That I just don't know. I think that the average person there, from what I recall, doing a lot of reading on this years ago, and I doubt it's changed. They saw the mullahs, not the top guy, but the local level, had accumulated the resources and had enriched themselves at the expense of the people. I think that the rial has devalued since 1979 by 99%. So there hope for human rights, minority rights? I don't see that happening. But could some strong man come in and think of post Sadat Egypt or something like that to get some sort of stability, to get to be able to reintegrate to the international community, be able to pump oil and have some coherence as a country. And, we would support that. We'd be willing to deal with people that weren't, completely blood drenched. But I don't think we, in particular, are going to have a whole lot to do with it. We shouldn't. It's their problem.
Right. I don't disagree. I mean, what they need is some kind of George Washington figure, right? Some noble Iranian general who says, "Hey, I will be the guarantor of the transitional government. I have the power, the military power to do it, and then I will turn this thing over to civilians. But I will guarantee it." But he's a noble guy, so that's what we're looking for. What's the probability of that? I guess we'll find out. I mean, hope springs eternal. But here's the other things I see. With a greatly diminished, if not neutered, right, Iran, the American presence in the region can come down from what it has historically been. The American Navy can now focus on one great opponent. And that means the Davidson window, unless the Chinese go in the next few weeks, the Davidson window is closed, right? Because the United States has one problem now, and that is the Western Pacific. And so to me, the Middle East, since we walked this planet, has never been lived in peace, right? The Abraham Accords, right, get reignited because I think what Mohammed bin Salman sees, right, and what is how many billions of dollars they can make if they just get rid of this shit. And they're on the verge of it. And so to me, I see the Middle East being transformed. And it'll be interesting because the Middle East will owe their allegiance, certainly to the United States. Do they supplant Europe as our primary allies in the world? Be interesting because Europe, not so much allied with us anymore. And so to me, I mean, it's a fascinating look over the horizon about what happens when the true great Satan goes away, and that is Iran, right? And what is possible in the region, and then what the implications are for the United States. All right, final thought, Jeffrey, final thought?
Yeah, those are all thought-provoking stuff. All you guys said. I have to say, I think one thing we kind of left out was the big demographic shift in Europe from the Middle East. Where the most common name in England now is Mohammed, and so consequently, I don't know if that's going to maybe slide back. Maybe if things are not so tyrannical and brutal for your average person, maybe people start going home on their own. And but
Interesting.
so that's the because that's the other big. I mean, if you look at the main driver of of our politics was the idea of these 20 million or so illegal aliens that just came rushing in during between 2020 and 2024, and how hard it is to get them out once they're here, and what a shift that is, and not just politics but culture, and so that's affecting everybody. So I think a solid Middle East, and basically caused by the nullification of the effectiveness of the fundamentalism in Iran right now, can only help. Can only help.
Pastor Will, final thought?
Yeah, I'm enthused to see the administration hold the line, and I'm not in favor of a war of choice by any stretch. Right? We shouldn't have had to relearn that lesson in 2002, 2003. Wars of choice are not always good ones. This is a war of choice, but they're holding the line on what the limits are, and they'll know when they achieve the objective. And I think achieving that objective is going to be unsatisfactory to a lot of the chattering class because it's all classified. Did we prevent them from enriching? And obviously, we can't permanently prevent them. But as you said, we buy ourselves 5 or 10 years. And oh, by the way, don't do anything we don't like. We will be back. And then do future administrations have the same will as the current administration? So, but I am less pessimistic than is my nature about this.
Wow.
Simply because, when you have secretaries and the vice president stand up there and look reporters in the eye and basically tell them that they're stupid, think of how many times that should have happened in our lifetimes. And it didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the Washington consensus. Everyone gets along and they didn't really mean it. And in the end, there you are in Afghanistan for 20 years for no good reason. So I do have optimism about that.
Wow.
Hey, we're still doomed, but we may have pushed it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, one of Will's favorite saying, we're doomed, right? So that guy is now optimistic. So
Well, it's just the value of this type of get together and talking. Because I remember for years, I mean, I was so much thinking that we were doing the right thing in Iraq, even after, one stupid thing after another. And finally, Mac, when we started doing this, you said to me, you said, hey, this guy said there was weapons of mass destruction and he knew there wasn't. And you almost got killed trying to find shit that they knew wasn't there. And then what really opened my eyes was that correspondence dinner, and you had George Bush and Karl Rove, and they're acting like, oh, they're joking about it. Oh, no weapons of mass destruction here. I thought Mac was right. And I turned me around 100%, these guys could give a shit, about, they're so smart, they're going to do dumb things. And the idea of really listening when people like that are saying things is something that to me is a result of being in this little group. Because you always think, you don't want to show your ass in front of everybody, right? So you always think before you talk, or you try to,
Timmy?
The guy who was in Beirut in 1983, granted, sitting on the USS Guam as a hospital corpsman, not as a Marine. All I can say is this has been a long time coming. 47 fucking years. I waited to see the payback for what they did to us there. And I just couldn't be happier. Every time I see film of them pulling like one of those Ayatollahs all out of the burnt up to a crisp out of a hole in the ground, I think to myself, there you go. Thank God we finally did it. I never thought I'd live to see the day that we got our payback, but we got it, and I just couldn't be happier.
When I rolled over at like 2 in the morning, and then I saw a news alert, so I just read it. And when I saw it, I got out of bed, I came in here, turned the TV on, and I watched it. And I had been on a high all week after the men's Olympic hockey team beats Canada
Oh yeah,
overtime. And
fuck
then
yeah,
and then you have those guys getting on TV, right? The one kid, Jack
missing
Hughes,
teeth.
right? Missing teeth, blood in his mouth, talking about how much he loves being an American and what an honor it is to play for and just like, come on. I mean, so heartfelt, so sincere. And then all those guys are saying that shit, and you're like, this is the best, right? And for those of us who grew up when the the Olympics were such a big deal because there was really no sports on TV except for the weekend.
Mhm.
Watching the Olympics was huge, and it always has been for me. And I love hockey, and I mean, and so I've been on a high on watching that kind of shit when they came home. They go to the White House, the State of the, all of that.
Yeah.
But so I'm watching this all day. Then the news cracks that, hey, there was a meeting or they blew up his compound. But he's not there, right? And
Mhm.
then you see the news flash, he might have been there. That's unconfirmed. And then you start seeing rumblings that he was in the compound. And you're thinking, no, no, that's not going to be true. And then they confirm it. When your wife, was holding like the children we've all had, and they do that
Mhm.
thing like happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy,
Mhm.
joy, joy, happy with a baby. That was
Mhm.
me. I was so fucking happy. And I know, and again, in the whole debate, does that make you a shitty human being? No, it fucking does not, man.
Mhm.
No, it fucking does not. I was in OCS when that building dropped, but there was no internet. There was no, we didn't have a TV. And
Right.
Craig Timberlake, who would go on to become a Major General in the Marine Corps, was my platoon sergeant, Staff Sergeant Timberlake. He came in and he said, if you don't think this is a fucking serious business, he said, let me tell you what just happened. And he pointed to Iraq and then he said the name of a lieutenant who was killed in Beirut. He slept in that rack right there less than a year ago. So you
Wow.
better get your shit together. And, I'll never forget that. Never forget them pulling bodies with guys in the red silky PT shorts that they were sleeping in when they
Yeah.
died.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, I was speaking and I went by the museum and, somebody saw me who knew me and they were talking about me and then he says to me, "Hey Mac, you should interview that guy." I said, "Who's that?" He said, "Well, these guys were in town. John Kelly had put together that dinner that honored, right, everybody that was there, right? And they brought anybody, they paid for their hotel, right? And the president was at the dinner and they made it a huge deal out of it, right? So these guys, do you remember the guy who was in the hospital in Germany
Oh, and he felt the stars.
when the commandant,
Yeah,
but
General Kelly.
he thought these guys were bullshitting him, and the commandant was PX Kelly, and they were
Yeah.
telling him, "Hey, the commandant's coming to see you," but he thought because he had bandages on his eyes, he thought these Air Force guys were pulling his chain. So when they said, "Hey, the commandant's here," he puts his hand up and he wants to feel his collar, right?
Hmm.
And then he feels the 4 stars, and then he makes that motion, "Get me a pen,"
Hmm.
right? And then he writes "Semper Fidelis" on it, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I was like, "You're that guy." And his
Hmm.
buddy was like, "This is him. He did that." And so that was, I mean, and I've interviewed guys, Ron Bazkowski, who was there, right? And a guy named Dan Dan Gospovich from Louisiana, so nicknamed Gospo talking that Louisiana. He's just killed in a head-on collision about a
Oh,
year ago. But he was with 10th Marines. I don't know which battalion was there or which battery were there as part of the move. But they're on the guns and they're just getting relieved when the thing detonates.
hmm.
And they got on a truck and they went over to that rock pile and worked on it. And so my sentiments that day were what Timmy just articulated,
Mhm.
right? And Timmy was there, right? But we never got a chance to get a crack at those fuckers, you know,
No,
the
yeah.
Iranians. We never did, and it's never sat well with those of us who, you know, I think any Marine in general, but for this, particularly those of us, that's not how we do business. You could come and
Mhm.
we might have a bad day and you might kill us, but at the end of the fucking day, we're gonna kill you and all of your fucking friends and anybody who had anything to do with it. And that's just the way the Marine Corps is. And
Mhm.
we're not afraid to pay a price, but at the end of the day, you'll be dead as fucking fried chicken. And so I like Timmy, and I think we could speak for, you know, a lot of Marines who were who said thank God this has happened, that
Yeah.
those fuckers got their due. And so
Yep.
anyway,
I remember that interview with Goss that you did, and
yeah,
he went over there in a track, and I remember him talking about how the back of that track drops, and you're looking at the damn what was left of that building, and it's like everybody just froze, like holy shit, and I could see it myself. That was a hell of an interview, but
well, and
those
wasn't
guys had a very tough holes,
that was the largest conventional
Yeah, it was.
right?
explosion
Explosion.
since World War II.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, it was apparently a huge. I just couldn't. I can't imagine being in that track, watching that thing drops. Everybody's just looking at it like, holy shit.
The other thought I had was, um, I hope he died a slow, agonizing fucking death. And I know, again,
Yeah,
I know, I mean, I'm supposed to be Catholic and all, but that thought went through my head. I hope that he wasn't concussed and knocked out. I hope he was conscious. I hope he was in a lot of pain, because the amount of death that guy caused, innocent people and all that fucked up shit, for as long as he did it,
Mhm.
I just pray that happened. I know that makes me a shitty human, but I don't give a fuck, right? You get what you get sometimes, and so I
But
hope it was that way.
Mac, it's all relative. As long as you're not the shittiest human.
Well, I'm not the shittiest,
That's right. That the
right?
guy who's dead, that guy is one of the
He's the
shittiest. Yeah,
shittiest.
yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, boys, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. And if you don't mind, as things happen, you know, we'll kind of do what we did, you know, during the Afghanistan thing, which is just come on and explain what we can explain, ask questions about what we don't understand, maybe, you know, fill in pieces. And you guys know, because you guys heard from a lot of people how much people enjoyed that.
Oh yeah.
But so anyway, so thanks very much for coming on tonight. And
All righty. All
thanks
righty.
for having us.
Semper Fidelis.
Semper
Yeah.
Fi, you bet.
Same to
All
you,
right.
brother.
All right, gents.
See you.
You're listening to All Marine Radio on the All Warrior Radio Network.